Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to another video. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make drum and bass in the style of Serum and Kings of the Rollers. So we're going to be making that disgusting Foghorn rollery type drum and bass. Now, as always, if you want to grab the files from this video, make sure you check the link in the description and make sure you check out my website for one-to-one lessons, mastering and more. But yeah, without any further ado, let's hop into FL. So here we are inside of FL and you can see that I've just set up kind of like a little demo loop thing to demonstrate the bass that we're going to be making in today's video. So if I just play this through, you'll get an idea of the kind of stuff we're going to make. So yeah, you can hear quite a few basses in there that I'm going to show you how to make today, but I figured beforehand, why not talk you through the drums that we've got going on here. So first of all, we've just got this kick. And on this kick, we've just got some EQ just to tame the top end a bit because there was just a bit more click than I wanted. Then we've got this snare. Pretty typical of what you hear in like a Kings of the Rollers type track. That's the kind of thing I was trying to go for. And in terms of effects on this, we've just got some EQ and some distortion with fruity fast distort. Then we've got some hats, splashy hats and rides going on. So first of all, we've got this hat layer. Then we've got these splashy hats. And then finally we've got this ride loop, and I'll just turn the metronome on so that you can properly hear the timing of this. And then on the overall drum bus we've just got some saturation with saturation knob, and yeah, with all of this stuff together it sounds like this. So yeah, that's how I made the drums for this kind of like Kings of the Rollers type demo track, but let's hop straight into the basses. So the first bass that we've got here is this bass. It's this kind of like weird wobbly 808 style kind of thing. I don't really know how to explain it properly, but you can see what's going on here. So the main component of this is this sine wave turned down 1 octave, and then we've just got LFO 1. We've made this shape with it, set it to trigger mode and 1/16th, and then we've just assigned it to the coarse pitch. We've got this set to -9. And then that just gives it that kind of pitch wobbling effect. And then on LFO2, we've got this very simple shape set to half on the rate and set to envelope mode, and we've just assigned that to the level. And yeah, it's very simple, this bass. And then in terms of effects, we've got some distortion with diode 1. We've just got a bit of gain going on with the compressor, and we've got some subtle reverb here. And I've turned up the low cut to cut off a bunch of the low end from this subby type bass, because obviously we don't want the low end of the sub because it will all go a bit weird. And then the only effect we have on this is actually just some kick sidechain. So yeah, it's a really simple bass, but you can see where it's going on inside of this main loop. It's just kind of like a filler bass between the other basses. And now moving on to this second bass that we've got here, you can see I've called it King of the Rollers. So yeah, I think it's fairly kind of typical like screechy bass that you might hear in this kind of track. But the main part of this bass is this PWM Maths 2 wavetable. We've got an oscillator A. We've turned this down 2 octaves, turned the randomization down. We've got the wavetable position at 171. And then we've turned on the FM and we've got this set to 43 and whacked the level all the way up. And then on oscillator B, we've just got the basic shapes wavetable set to sine wave, turn this up 2 octaves, and we've turned the level and the random all the way down because we're not using this for the sound in itself, we're just using it for the FM. Then we've whacked on the sub, left it on the default wave, turned it down 2 octaves and set the level to 35. Then in terms of the filter over here, we've just left this on MG low 12 and we've set this to around 4800 Hertz. Then for these LFOs, you can see we've got a couple of different LFO shapes here. So the first one is just, again, a very similar kind of LFO shape to the last bass and doing a very similar thing. We've got this shape, set it to trigger mode, set it to 1/16th, and then inside of the matrix, we've just dragged it up to here. Then we've set this to 1, turn this onto global and master tune and make sure it's set to bipolar mode on there, and then it will give you that cool kind of pitch wobble effect. And then again, you can see here, I don't know why it's all the way down here, we've done a similar thing with LFO2 but a different shape to give you that kind of downwards pitch slope. So yeah, we've just dragged this onto there, we've set this to -1 this time, global, master tune again, and then we've set this to 1 way this time. And yeah, we've got this on envelope mode and 2 bars, but obviously you can mess around with those bits depending on how you want your bass to sound. And then in terms of the effects section, we've just got some hyperdimension going on, so we've turned the mix all the way down on this hyper bit of the hyperdimension, but then on the dimension bit we've set both the size and the mix to 50%. Then we've used diode 2 distortion because it's lovely and gritty, turn this up to 36 with the mix all the way up, and then just added some reverb. And then if we take a listen to this with all the effects turned off in the mixer, you get a sound like this. And then the effects that we've got going on are pretty simple. So I've used FabFilter Pro R2 with this, but you can use whatever reverb you want. It doesn't matter too much. But I've just set this to a very short time, set the distance really close, and then after the reverb we've got some distortion, so having the reverb before helps to trash up the bass a bit even more. Then we've just set this to clip control mode and push this really quite hard. Turn the gain down a bit so it's not super loud. But I mean, you can use whatever distortion you want for this. It doesn't have to be this specific distortion. And then we've just got a low end cut because we've layered a separate sub bass underneath. And finally, we've just got some kick sidechain. So in terms of the sub bass that I just mentioned, this is actually a really simple bass which sounds absolutely disgusting and layers underneath perfectly. And it's all inside a Serum as well. So it sounds like this. So yeah, the basis of this is this sine wave. We've just gone on to analog and basic shapes, turn this down 2 octaves, left the level where it is. And then in terms of the effects, we've got diode 1 here for the distortion. We've set the drive to 55%. We've grabbed a compressor, turned it onto multi-band mode, added some gain there. And then on these different bands, you can adjust these. So I've turned the first band all the way down, turned the mid band all the way down, and then left the low band where it is. And then of course, because this is being layered underneath that other bass, we want to copy the LFO shape for the master tune automation. So we've just got this shape going off, set to -1, and set the type to one way, the same as for the other bass. Now moving on to this second bass that we've got here, it sounds like this with all the effects turned off. And I mean, the effects do add quite a lot, but it still sounds kind of cool on its own. So you can see we've got both these sine waves here for the basic shapes wavetable, but we've just turned oscillator A down 2 octaves, oscillator B down 1 octave. We've left the randomization and the level where they are. We've got FM from A turned on oscillator B, and we've got this set to 69%. You can ignore the fact that's turned up because it's not doing anything. Then for this LFO that you can see here, we've just made this shape, set it to bar triplet by just clicking this triplet bit, and then that enables you to set it to this mode, turn it to envelope mode, and then we've just assigned it to the coarse pitch on both oscillators A and B. Then inside of the matrix is probably the easiest place to do this. We've set it to 1 way for both of these and set it to 3 on both of them. Then in terms of effects, we've got some reverb. We've set this to plate mode and turned down everything apart from the width, which we've got at 21%. Then we've just assigned envelope 1 to the mix of the reverb, and that means that if you hold down a note and let go, it's not going to have this annoying tail, whereas if you did, it gives it that kind of weird sound, which we don't want. You can mess around with how much this envelope is modulating the mix level. And depending on where you set it, it will give you a different sound. And then we've just got some distortion set to asymmetrical mode with the drive at 73%. And we've got the same sub as before, but we've just switched up the way that the pitch modulation is working so that it's the same as the bass that we're layering underneath. And then for effects in the mixer, first of all, we've got saturation knob by Softtube. I mentioned this in quite a lot of videos, to be fair, but it's a great free plugin. Usually we would set the gain difference, but actually we're not doing that in this. So we turn this up, as well as adding saturation, it actually makes it louder, which is going to drive it more into the distortion, which we're going to add in a minute. Then after saturation knob, we've got this low end boost, which is quite ridiculous, nearly 10 dB of gain, and that's just going to give it a different sound when it goes into the distortion because of all the low end. Then we've got isotope trash 2. Now for this one, I set it to multi-band mode and just set it on the low setting for this distortion, which I've dragged up to 580 Hz and set to fry mode. But if you don't have this plugin, what you can do is use various send effects and EQs to split off the signal and distort just the lower sound. Then I've got another EQ with a low end cut because we're layering a sub underneath, and also quite a harsh top end boost. We've got some OTT just to crispen up the sound a bit, and I've added some reverb using Fruity Reverb 2 just to give it a cool tail. And then down here is just some kick sidechain. Now for this final bass, if we take a listen to this bass with all of the effects in the mixer turned off, You can hear it just sounds kind of like an 808. It's a bit boring for what we actually want, but the effects in the mixer are where we get kind of all the magic coming from for this. So first of all, we've got oscillator A set to analog BD sine. We've turned it down 2 octaves, turn the wavetable position up to 84 and set this warp mode to bend plus and set it to 39. Then we just made this shape on LFO1, set it to envelope mode and set it to 1 bar. And we've also turned on the filter. We've left it on MG low 12, the default one, but we've set the cutoff to 115, turn the drive way up to 82 and turn the fat to 20. Then in terms of the effects, we've used diode 1, we've set the drive to 25 but left the mix on full to start to thicken it up a bit, and then this is where things start to get ridiculous. So we've turned on the multi-band compressor and we've set the gain to basically 24 decibels. Then we've turned the high band all the way down, but we've turned the mid and low bands all the way up. And we've got this filter on MG low 6, just set the cutoff to 894 and left everything else where it is. And then if we go through the effects which really bring this sound together. First of all, we've got effector on phaser mode. Make sure you turn off bypass, otherwise it won't work. And then we've just set this to just here. Then we've got another effector, this time on flanger mode. Again, make sure you turn off the bypass. And these effectors, you can mess around with the position in these. Some of them won't really give you a good sound, but other positions you can just mess around and get your own sound coming out of this for some really cool different bass tones. And with this one turned on, it sounds like this. And then this distortion is really what starts to bring it together, because when you have that effector with the flanger going into the distortion like this, it gets insane. So we've just got this on Nasher mode and it absolutely mashes up the sound. Then we've got an EQ with quite an aggressive low end and top end cut just to really help tame the sound because it's so ridiculous before. And then finally we've got some reverb just to help give it a cool tail. And I should mention that underneath this we've just layered a sub, the same as before, but this time we don't need any pitch modulation because it's just one flat pitch. So you can see all the settings in here are just the same as before, but like I said, just without any pitch modulation. And we want to add a kick sidechain to both the sub there and the main bass. But yeah, that's everything for today's video. As I said at the start of the video, if you want to grab the files from this video, make sure you click the link in the description. Wow, I said video a lot of times there. And also make sure you check out my website if you want to get access to one-to-one lessons, mastering and more. And also drop a comment letting me know what video you want to see next. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.